Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show.
Excuse me.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Well, everyone's a special guest to me. I'm joined by the mindfulness guru, Mr. Brett Hill. Now, he has an organization or company called Language of Mindfulness, which specializes in incorporating mindfulness into your daily life and then how that can make your life better. But before I go into this episode and asking our honored guest his thoughts on mindfulness, Brett, can you give the listeners a little bit of intro of who you are beyond what I just stated?
Sure. Thank you so much for helping me, for asking me on the show and helping me get here. I really appreciate that. I specialize in mindfulness with a focus on mindful communications. And so I'm all about trying to help people have better, deeper, more connected, more satisfying conversations to avoid the traps and habits that keep us disconnected and unhappy and feeling like we don't have we don't have deep enough conversations or connections with ourselves and the world and people. And so I try to help people do that. And I've learned some amazing stuff from some incredible teachers that I've sought out through my life to learn really get under the hood of what makes people be who they are, how that works for them, and ways that it doesn't work for them, and help people unpack that, help myself unpack that, really get present with what's happening between me and my life as I've chosen it to be, or as I feel like it's imposed on me, and then also when engaging with other people, how to do that in a more effective, satisfying way for everybody.
I love that, meaningful relationships and communication. So, give us a little like your background. What was your background in regards to study?
I started out in college when I was a young guy. I decided that I was like one of those, I was like a sophomore in college, and at that age is really intense. I'm an older guy now, but it's really intense. Everybody thinks looking for real meaning, what's really true and what's really core, and really diving into the deep depths of stuff. It was really a great period of time, but what I decided, and I just had this kind of epiphany in a way, like, oh my God, like everything depends on our ability to communicate. If we can't communicate well, you can't have good relationships. You can't build a business. You can't solve a pandemic. You can't build a city. You can't plead your case in court. You can't do anything if you can't communicate well. And I thought, that's a skill that we just don't focus on. We just never really take time to go, well, how does this work? Like, what words do I speak now that are going to be better than those other angry, pissed off words that I was thinking about speaking? How do I manage this? What is it, the process like? What's communication about? We don't even give it the time of day. We just assume that everybody knows how to do this. And we know enough to kind of wade through our life, but we don't know. But that's so much less satisfying than taking just some time to actually look at how can I do this better? Because if you do, it uplevels every conversation that you will ever have for the rest of your life. And that just blew me apart. And I thought I've got to go in. So I studied interpersonal communication in college and psychology. I went on to have a career in technology, and I used my communication skills to explain tech. And so I wound up working for Microsoft and some other companies. I was what they call a technical evangelist. There is such a thing. And so they shipped me all over the country, and I'd be on stages explaining how technology works to people in ways that made it, my job was to make it relevant. Like, it's not just like, hey, look, you got a blue button on the upper right of your screen. It's more like, this is going to help you save time. Let me show you how, make it real. And so I had this parallel path, if you will, and a pretty deeply technical guy. And then at the same time, I was also pursuing sort of the technology of the inner work of how do we work as human beings? What's our neurology about? How does that limit us? And how can we break out of um, kind of our own neurology kind of works against us in some ways, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, I think. And what's that about, and how does that cause us troubles, and what can we do about it? And so I studied somatic psychotherapy, which is a really intense form of mindful presence with other people, and being really, really deeply paying attention to what are people saying to you and where are they coming from, not just listening to the words, but listening to the bigger picture. Like, what are they not saying? What are they fighting for? What's their problems? What their stresses? So this was straight up psychotherapy. I never did get a degree in psychotherapy, but I trained as if I had with a bunch of amazing folk. So I took all of that. Also became a meditator and taught meditation. I founded a thing called the Quest Institute and Meditation Center in Dallas, which was a thing for a few years. And then I had a bunch of other pursuits, but all this kind of blended together to kind of be where I am now, to kind of decide, well, I've had enough tech and I want to just try to put this goodness out into the world. And that's what I'm doing now.
I love it. So, it's very interesting because I work quite often with students that study communication at my job because I work with students that are interested in getting into media and all that. So I work with the
Mm-hmm.
School of Comm. So I do
Oh,
know the
yeah.
importance of communication. Uh,
Yeah.
and then I realized that what you were saying with mindfulness and connecting with people is that you're reading in regards to a really active listener. You're not just looking at the words, but you're also looking for the nonverbals, which I've come to find out that what a lot of our language, like almost what 80% of
Yeah.
what we say is not said, it's nonverbal communication.
Yep. That's
So
exactly right. Yeah.
what
So,
bring that to concept to light. Like what so when you're saying you're having a fully engaged, mindful conversation with someone, what are some of the cues and the things that you tell people to look for
yeah.
to really, really be in the moment of a conversation?
So there's a couple of pieces to that. First, you have to have a mindset in yourself, a place where you're able to do this. You can't just prescriptively check boxes and go, oh, this person's like this, like this. You have to be mindful of yourself. So job one is to develop some mindfulness capacity so that you can, commonly they say, press pause, right? So rather than be reactive, there's this spaciousness where, it's almost like this, you could think of it like situational awareness, almost like you walk into a room and you're like, okay, 3 people over here, exit door over here, fire hazard over here. You kind of like start taking inventory, but you do it in a much more mindful way. Instead, it's kind of like, okay, who is this person? Well, they're this old. They sound like they have this kind of education. They talk this way. This is the cadence that they use. Oh, they slur or they don't slur, or they're really, really fast and rapid and they're like all anxious, or maybe they're just slow and backed off and tentative. All of that goes into an experience of what is the conversation like for you, and what does that tell you about other people as well. And maybe you have to be careful not to read too much into that, but just to be aware that those things influence the conversation. So I'm listening not only for what they are saying, but how they're saying it. And I'm listening for things that tell me something about who is this person. I'm listening for what are they fighting for in their lives? What are they lobbying for? What do they wish to be true? What are their struggles? Because generally those things are thematic. It's very interesting. Like one of the rules I have, or I say rules, but I mean guidelines I have, is if someone comes up to you and they say, oh, my teachers are treating me like crap, or I'm having a really hard time, usually what they're complaining about is the thing that they're complaining about, but it's a placeholder for the bigger thing, which is like, my life is full of these kinds of oppressions. And this one thing is jumping out at me because it's representative of the way I feel like I'm not getting a fair deal. So really what they're saying is that I want to be treated fairly. I want justice in my world. Now, who doesn't, right? Everybody wants it, but they're fighting for justice. They want to be, I want to be treated. I want to be treated. And so you could say to someone, instead of saying, going into the details, well, what did he say? Well, that instead you could say, Yeah, it sucks whenever it doesn't seem fair. And what's going to happen is they're going to go, that's right, because you nailed it. You hit it right on the head, the thing that's really bugging them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so basically, in regards to asking when you're an active listener, you're listening for appropriate clues to hone in on those clues and then respond as such and ask engaging questions to pull out more information from someone you're having a conversation with and understand
Yeah,
that a lot of their problems on the surface there's a deeper level like
right.
maybe they're having a bad they're telling you a story where they're complaining but it could be a deeper
There's
overall
right.
injustice as you
There's
said or
always a deeper level. And
yeah.
so my job or my role in life, if you will, is I try to stay connected to that as much as I can with myself and everybody else, because there's always a deeper level. There's what's happening on the surface, but there's always a deeper level. And if you just take a breath, get mindful and get present with yourself, you can connect up to the common human experience that we're all having. Like, we all are human beings on the planet. And if you speak to somebody and you're actually in touch with that, it changes what you say and what you do and how you interact. And usually that changes in a very positive direction on things. So you're listening to people, and the intent isn't so much to draw them out as it is to create rapport. You're trying to listen to them. Why? Hopefully because you care enough about the person to bring your A game to listening, right? Otherwise, why would you bother, right? Somebody walks in the room and you're not connected to them, you don't care about it. You're not going to like bring your best self. Although I would encourage you to try it, because usually you can find stuff there that will surprise you. The But if it's somebody that you're actually listening, the important thing is to not just ping off the words, but to take a breath and create some spaciousness. Feel your feel into your caring for this person, and let that be a part of what you're in touch with when you're actually communicating. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. The only thing I was thinking about in regards to, reading the room and, kind of going through I like what I see, like kind of like the Sherlock Holmes of clues, is
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes some of those clues could be based off of either negative, not negative, but like distorted lens. So for instance,
Yeah.
I see you as a white male and I'm
Yeah.
going through context clues, but I don't know your life story. I don't know your struggles. So how do you in the moment being mindful and you're going through that recognizing context clues, but also really doing a good job of not going overboard and making assumptions and feeding into stereotypes in
That is
regards
a
to the
fabulous
conversation?
question. Step one is to realize that we do that, right? Like, you see me as an old white guy, and it's like, okay, so what does that mean? Well, old white guys are like this in my world, and
Mhm,
pushing all of that onto me, and some of that's going to fit, and some of it isn't. And so the key thing is to, like, notice that that's what you do,
mhm,
and then see what remains. Like, it's kind of like, okay, somebody walks in the room, and let's say this girl walks in the room and she's got red hair and blue eyes and freckles, and I have her tagged as like Irish heritage. And she's like, okay, it raises the neural network in me, because this is where the neurology comes in, of every other girl I've seen like her that
mhm,
has this Irish heritage. And some of those women you may have known very well, some of them you may not have known very well, and I immediately want to make her like everybody else that I've known. And once I know that that's the way the brain works, I can dial that back
mhm,
and go, okay, I'm just going to listen and be present with the fact that this is what I want to be true. Is it? Oh, I can see that, yeah, it kind of is in these ways, and it's not in these other ways. And that way you can learn a little bit about when those biases actually work for you and when they don't, without buying into the whole menu all at once, right? So it's super cool that you're aware enough to know that that's what's going on, and go, okay, I don't want to just name it and
mhm,
run with it. So what you do is you take it. This is, again, you have to have this mindful space where you're aware of the impact. She walks in the room. Oh, here's what I want to assume, Okay, I see you. I have all this, stuff coming up. Oh, he's like this. He's like this. But then, what is my actual experience? And that's where it gets real. What is my actual experience? Really listening to you, and then noticing how that impacts me in the moment, and being in relationship to that, so that I can dance with the reality of the conversation. And so, you name some things. I have the same thing. It's like, okay, well, here are things about you. You talk this way. You look this way. I can make assumptions about your environment. And there's all kinds of things that people can do, right? And so, whether those things are true or not, I don't know, but I do know that my brain is going to make certain assumptions, right? And so, my job is just to listen and be present. And here's what I do know for real: that you and I are both human beings on the planet. And we both know what it's like to be hungry. We both know what it's like to have ambitions. We both know what it's like to be hurt. We both know what it's like to be sick. We both know what it's like to have your hopes dashed. In some ways, we have big common areas along those lines. In other ways, they're really, really different. And I want to be completely respectful of those things. But we have a ton in common, just because we're all on the same planet, spinning around the same sun. We all see the sun come up and go down. We all know what that's like, right? And if we start our conversations and our interactions from that place rather than our differences, it makes a huge difference. That doesn't mean I'm trying to negate or take away any differences. Rather, I'm trying to honor them by creating a ground, what some people call a ground of health, whereby those differences can come into the conversation and the relationship survives.
Right. So I mean, what I'm hearing, and this is, very difficult, is like with being mindful in a conversation, it's almost like it's like a 360 model. Like you have to really engage, but then at the same time, think about what you're thinking about. So how do you like for someone that's really struggling with like thinking like the overthinker club of the
Yeah,
United
yeah.
States? Not you.
You have to
I'm the
get out of
president
your
of
head.
that, right?
You have to get out of
Overthinker
your
club.
head and into your senses, right? It's
Yeah.
kind of like the way you do that is by not thinking about it so much. It's just very hard to talk about without getting people come. Well, how am I going to like track all? Well, he's talking at this and he's like, how am I going to know? Well, you can't do it in your head. You can in a certain way. Like if something stands out, like somebody's just like, well, the thing is, I really wanted to say this, and they're just like going a million miles an hour. Well, that's telling you something about their inner state, right? But that's obvious, but you don't like check it like a check. Instead, the trick is to just be in tune with what is my experience now in a very generic sort of open, what they might call open awareness of what's going on now. And when you do that, what you find is you have a tremendous capacity to be in tune with a lot of what you might call granularity. You're familiar with the idea of like a high resolution monitor or high resolution image on a screen. Well, Google has a training they call Search Inside Yourself. So it's like, Google search the world, but they have a training for their employees they call Search Inside Yourself. And what they talk about is high resolution awareness and sensitivity. And so what you find is that if I'm trying to check all the details about this and this and this, I actually have a very focused to find, and the list becomes overwhelming and I can't multitask. Like, what's going on with me? What's going on with them? I don't know where I am in that. Instead, you take a step back, and it's almost like you put all this on the screen. You go, oh, I see. This is the way it feels. There's all these things are true, right? If I drill into any one of them, oh, they're dressed like this. That reminds me of something. But if I don't even consciously name that, that is still impacting me. And I just go, it just feels like this, whatever this is. Right? It feels like I want to step back, or it feels like I want to lean in. And you're just tracking that in yourself. I don't know what it is about you, but I want to lean. I'm just speaking metaphorically, but I want to lean into the conversation. I'm really liking what we're saying. I'm liking how this feels. Or I don't know what's going on here, but I'm finding that I really want to slow it down and take it easy. I don't feel, and behind the scenes, you're going, I don't feel safe here. I feel like something's not right. I don't know what it is. I'm just going to slow this down, but I'm going to name it. I just need to slow this down. So those are the kinds of things. So rather than get caught up in the minutia, you just track in the sense of it.
Got it. So how about so from what I'm hearing too, is that then the training, a real good training, not only in regards to communication with others, that some of this training needs to be done in regards to mindfulness and meditation,
Yeah.
like training yourself in those feelings and those thoughts that go in and out by doing the mindfulness training
Yeah.
on your own, being present on your own, being present, you can bring those skills to a conversation with someone else. What are your thoughts
Exactly.
on that?
Exactly that. I have a saying. I say, if you want to be mindful under stress, you have to practice when you're not. And so it's no different than if you want to play music in public, you play in private first, right?
Yeah,
And so it's like you practice your skills and then you bring them into the world. And so you have to have some skills to do that with. And so there are definite practices you can do. And it's just like a musician learns to play a piano and you sit down. Let's just say that you have a listener and they're going, I don't know about this. How do I get from A to B in mindfulness? Well, how, let's say you were wanting to play the piano. How do you learn to get to where you can play simple, three note or three chord progression? You start without knowing anything. Somebody shows you middle C. You learn how to play a chord. You practice it. You learn rhythm, a little bit of rhythm, and then you put it all together. And it takes you maybe, you know, uh, 8 or 9 hours or less to learn to play a simple song. But so you went from knowing nothing to being able to play a simple song in a very short period of time. Now, does that make you ready to, start your own TikTok? No, but it does get you from zero to somewhere and very quickly. Same thing's true with mindfulness. You can begin to practice and it takes some time. And at first people resist it because it's not such a great experience at first for people who start, because the first thing that happens is you begin to notice, because that's what you're trying to do for the first time, maybe for a lot of people, notice what's really going on in my head. What's really going on in my heart? What's really going on in my world? Because for the first time, you're sitting down and letting the dust settle from the chaos of your life long enough to go, this doesn't feel that great, or I really have way too much going on that I'm worried about. That is an amazing, incredible awareness to have, but people want to flee from it because they don't want to face the reality of that experience. Now, it's not usually overwhelming. It's just not pleasant. It's sort of like falling off a bike, right? You fall off the bike and you go, screw this. I don't want to do this again. Or do you get back on and you do it? And pretty soon, hey, you got a bike, man. You're going places. But that's what the effort is like to begin with. It can be a little frustrating at first, but within a very short period of time, it pays massive, massive, massive dividends. I mean, it's the best thing that you can do for yourself, aside from making sure that you can, it's in the realm of being healthy, right? So it's like I can't. This is where I go off the rails with in terms of enthusiasm. I just can't tell people enough that I can't emphasize enough that it's if there's three things that you could do for yourself that would dramatically improve your life, this is definitely in the top three, maybe the top one, because it's going to make everything that you do better.
right. And so, obviously, like you said, you practice by yourself, you understand mindfulness of yourself, and then by doing that, you can bring it to your interactions with others,
Yeah,
thus making your relationships better. So,
yeah. Go ahead.
so for people that you meet, do you meet a lot of clients? Like, let's go back to the communication aspect. Do you meet a lot of people? Where does some of your people come from? The people that want to use your services, like, well, like I don't know how to talk to my friends, or I don't know how to talk at work, and then you're
Yeah.
like, let's try mindfulness first, and they're like, I came here to talk about talking, not
Well,
mindfulness.
yeah, and I do talk to them about talking. I won't
Yeah,
often, I won't often say, "Well, what you need is you need to be mindful." Instead, I'll just say, "Why don't you try this? Why don't you try this?" And I approach it from the point of view of their problem, what they want to do, and then we work it backwards. It's like, I'll give you an example. I have a client who has a problem in business meetings where she doesn't she doesn't want to speak up because she feels like everybody in the room knows more than she does. Now, that's not true, but that's the way she feels, right? And it's hurting her career. And so we get really mindful about that. So we first we just get the facts straight. Is it true that you don't know as much? Well, they have more experience. Yeah, yeah. But do you find that are you effective at your work? Yeah. Do people give you good feedback? Yeah. Do you bring valuable information to the team? Yeah. Do people like what you have? Yeah. So okay. So objectively, it's not true. That she doesn't know as much and that the team doesn't want to hear from her. That's just not objectively true. Still, though, the objective truth isn't the problem. And so the problem is inside. It's not outside, it's inside. And so we have to then, so using that, I can prove to the client that the problem is in their world, it's in their inner world, not in the outer world. And so I can say, well, what happens when you start to speak up? And I'll say, so just imagine that you're getting ready and they go, oh, I just want to see that. Okay, so let's just hang out with it. This is where I use it, what they call a somatic approach. It's like, okay, I just feel like something's tightening up in my throat. Go, okay, so now we're working in the moment, right? We're working with somatic experience in the moment. And somatic means felt sense in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say, okay, so let's just relax that a little bit. What happens when you breathe and you relax that? Now we're doing a mindful practice. I haven't named it, but now we're being mindful. What's my experience like in the moment on purpose and paying attention? There's three things that John Kabat-Zinn's definition, who's kind of the guy who's given credit for defining mindfulness. And I want to just name right away that there are people who have different definitions, but this is a very common one. Paying attention on purpose. So you're going to choose to pay attention in the moment, meaning I'm not thinking about next week, my tests or my taxes or my car or my girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. Instead, you're thinking about what's happening right now in the moment. And then with non-judgmentally, which means I'm not making myself bad or making them bad. I'm not paying attention. So if I have a thought like I don't know as much as the other, instead of being angry about it, I'm just noticing, oh, I'm having a thought that I'm not as good as they are. I'm just having, there's that thought again. Rather than that's really true about me, it's like, oh, there's that thought again. And that is a massive, massive shift in your psyche from believing that you don't know to just noticing that it's nothing more than a thought. It's just a thought. It's just an old thought that's hanging out from times gone by, a habit that you've gotten. And if we're doing psychotherapy, we can get into the underground of that, but often we don't need to. So just to go back to the story, then the girl we're working from, she doesn't want to speak up. She's got the clenching thing. We work on relaxing and leaning into the fact that she does have something to offer. When she feels into that, then she feels like she can speak up more and she actually takes more chances. The more chances she takes, the more encouragement she gets from the real world. And she begins to relax around that because the world actually responds positively to you whenever you're coming from a really authentic place like that. And so there's embedded in that is a mindfulness practice. Now, in addition to that, I'll give her a mindfulness technique. So go and do these things and tell me come back next week and we'll talk about it. And then also do this meditation that I'll give you. And I don't even necessarily call it a mindfulness meditation.
So it's like parallel. So you're doing mindfulness and then also giving her, she's going to practice not only mindfulness, but then she's also going to do like, I'm not saying exposure therapy, but like actually challenge it and speak up in meetings.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
she's doing mindfulness, but she's actually doing the practical part of applying it to that.
Yeah. I do it from both ends. I want to make sure that it's practical. This isn't just an idea. This has to make a difference, right? And so, and maybe she's successful, maybe she's not. We just keep working it and seeing what happens. But I would give her an assignment. So your assignment is to go and speak up more, and then come back and tell me what happens. And either you do or you don't. I'm not going to be judgmental about it either way. It's kind of like, cool, you tried it and oh my god, I really seized up and I had an anxiety attack. Okay, we got to do some deeper work if that's the case. Or yeah, I was able to and it worked and it was great. Either way is fine with me. Let's just find out what's true for you.
What about the scenarios? Obviously communication is really instrumental in couples. Have you worked with two people and then had them work on the mindfulness
Yes.
as well as observe how they communicated to each other.
Yeah, no, that's a whole bigger, complicated scenario. I
Hmm.
haven't done that a ton, but I have done a lot of group work and I have done some couples work. Um, there are people who specialize in that as a whole slice of counseling and therapy, couples dynamics, because it's complicated. Um, but it always gets down to the same thing, which is to slow things down,
Hmm.
get present with your experience, and then being able to name your experience in a way that isn't confrontational and owning your side of it. Once you begin to be able to do that, then you can explore how you are impacting other people. Uh, and there's a whole thing about that. It's kind of like it's one thing to go, okay, so there's specific language, like someone walks in the room and says, well, Brett, you really screwed up on that. And you go, and I'm going, whoa, wait, what are you, what? Come on, man. I want to be reactive and come back at them, take a breath and go, I'd really like to know what we're, what your thoughts are on this, but I need for this to not be so confrontational so that we can engage in this conversation and get somewhere. Is that okay with you? And I get their enlistment and dialing down the challenging bit a bit. Uh, if it's bugging me. Now, if it's not bugging me, and if I have a relationship where that's just kind of, because we just razz each other all the time and it's nothing, then that's cool. But if it actually is bugging me, I'm feeling like inside I just want to back up and be or I want to charge and be aggressive, just to let that be true, because it is true, and go, okay, this is what's happening. I really rather have it be not. I'd rather not react from that place, but instead create a circumstance whereby I can actually find out what's going on so that we can address it. So you take a breath and you relax. So you try to you chill, literally. You want to not be chill, but you increase in my world they call that resilience, right? It takes a lot to get you aggravated.
Yeah. So what I was thinking, how do you think within authentic relationships and authentic communication, how you're working for Microsoft and all that, how do you think technology has either enhanced our communication or also hindered? Because there's quite benefits to communication with technology, right? It's quicker, it's global and all that.
Hey,
But
we're
then,
talking, aren't we?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. But then at the same time, I mean, honestly, I'd be transparent. Like even during COVID, man, just having a face-to-face conversation was so better to me than like a Zoom conversation. So,
Yeah.
so I don't know. Can you speak to that about, the mindfulness and the challenges of technology on that?
Well, it's a huge conversation, and it's a difficult one because there's connected conversation and there's disconnected conversation and there's person to person and person to screen and all kinds of stuff. It's like relating to you on my monitor here is really different than if I'm sitting here in the room with you.
Hmm.
And it's huge. It's massive difference somatically, neurologically. It's a massive big difference. Now, it's a conversation we could never have otherwise. And so consequently, I'm like, okay, that's great. And so one of the bonuses is, yeah, I get to talk to people I would never meet. And that's a big deal. When it gets to you stop meeting people, instead, that's all you do. I mean, in person, then you subtract that out of your world. And I went through a particular sort of living experience with um, this orientation to life, so to speak. It was really intense. And one of the things that they taught us in this group was there are certain things that you can get from aspects of life that you can only get from those aspects of life.
Hmm.
So what I mean to say is that there are things that I get from being face to face with people that you can only get that way. And
Hmm.
there are things that people need. We we grew up we grew our neurology for millions of years to live in community with each other.
Hmm.
We need each other. Nobody lives alone. And anybody who thinks they do is mistaken. There's there's air that you breathe that isn't polluted because someone downstream is not polluting your air. There's water that you breathe, you drink because the river is clean or people are working at the factory to make it happen for you. You were born and you lived to be like 1 year old because somebody took care of you. Otherwise, you would have never made it. We're weird like that in terms of mammals, in terms of animals, where we have the most vulnerable infants of any species. So our very existence depends on our ability to help each other and to collaborate. And without it, it doesn't work. And so we have a nervous system that's really wired to be interactive and face to face. You take that away, something is missing. And there's a way we regulate ourselves and we find out who we are through these interactions. Now, you can get a certain amount of that digitally, but there's a certain amount you don't learn if you're not face to face, something like proximity. How close am I supposed to stand to somebody? You know, what's it like if I yell? You know, what do people respond to when I wear this or when I don't? Because you can't see my, my night slippers here or whatever, So it's like, what does all that mean? And it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it's just an experience that you don't have in terms of the holistic experience of somebody. How does that person move through space? That tells you a great deal. Just watching somebody walk tells you a great deal about it.
Yeah, I thought about that too. Like if you can see the struggle of someone limping or something, you can tell they're hurt. So yeah, you get a lot of cues in a physical space. Also, how they carry themselves in a physical space that you lose through
Yeah,
technology.
that's right.
And so, I've always thought about that too in regards to, the mindfulness that you're talking about in communication is like it's a teeter-totter, right? Like as we
Mm-hmm.
advance as a society with technology, there's still things that go back to, our primal, very basic instincts that will not be replicated or
Yeah,
replaced by technology. Like I
yeah,
was thinking about that. Like I was like, man, I was going crazy. I'm an extrovert. I could be on 1,000 Zoom calls and still be lonely. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. That's the thing.
it
I
was
hear
it
you.
was
Now, I
weird.
want to tell you when you said that, I felt that. I
Yeah.
felt it because I'm what they call empathic, right? So I felt that. I heard you say I can still be lonely, and I appreciate you kind of being a little vulnerable out there. I get it. I hear you, and it's like, yeah. So it's about connection for you, right? It's
Yeah.
about connection. It's like, hey, I need someone to show up with so I can feel them and get real with the reality of that caring relationship. Um, and that matters. It
Mhm.
friggin' matters to people, and it's hard to create over the wire. It really is, or over the air. Um, so yeah, I hear you with that, and it's like that's the problem. I think not mindfully speaking, this isn't going to go on forever. Things are actually, I think, going to get back to some sense of normal culture at some point, but we still got a ways to go.
So what about also, in regards to big disruptions to mindfulness is I feel like the world is a lot busier, a lot noisier,
Yeah,
a
boy, it
lot
is.
more information. So going back to that technology question, how do you think it's had a we talked about how it had an effect on communication. How can you what are your thoughts on the disruption of being mindful as we've gotten away from nature and just a lot more noise? Because I feel like there's a lot
Yeah.
more noise. Like go on your
Mhm.
phone, there's a lot more news and there's a lot more. So can you
That's
speak to
exactly
that?
right.
Yeah,
That's
can you speak to
exactly right. And we're not wired for it. I was having I'm a host on another podcast called Organizational Mindfulness Podcast, and I was interviewing Dr. Ron Siegel, who is a Harvard professor of psychology and a mindfulness expert. And in that interview, he talks about exactly this. And he said some very interesting things which stuck with me. And one of them was, that basically it's like this: the rate of change
that?
has overcome our capacity to adapt.
Yeah. I felt that, and I can understand that too. It's like literally you can go. I literally as a thing to kind of jump on that before you go into deeper thing is like you literally can go on Twitter and in one moment see the most catastrophic thing, and then like the second thing is celebratory. So your emotion is going like legit.
Yeah,
A famous celebrity dies, a team wins the World Series in one instinct, and you're getting that information, and you're just all So yeah, I
no,
get
right.
that.
It's
Like,
a total jangle. And it's like that. See, there's something you've just named there, which is very important. It's like it's disruptive
mhm,
to your neurology and it's disrespectful of the way that human beings are wired. It's
mhm,
like it's like an insult. It's like kind of like, oh, look, 300 people die in a tornado. Happy puppies get saved by the good guy. It's kind of like, within 10 seconds of each other. It's kind of like, well, you know what? I'm not a computer. I'm a human being and I need transition time. So one of the ways that you begin to do this is to honor yourself, honor your neurology, honor the way that you're wired, and build in times for you to transition through your day. So when things are busy and you're really, and you come home, give a beat before you start to do something else, transition. You're stepping out, you're getting ready to go to work, you're going to class, whatever, transition. I'll tell you a super powerful one, if you can remember to do it. Anytime you walk through a door from like you're in the school environment, is that right? So, okay, you walk into the classroom, stand at the door for a minute, look around, transition. What's it like to be in this room? What's getting ready to happen here? Who are these people? How do I feel about them? How do I feel about myself being here? And it's not like you're standing there writing an essay. You're just checking in. Oh, what's it like for me to be here? A minute ago, I was walking down this little narrow hallway, and now I'm in a room, and it's lit like this, and it smells like this, and the floor is like this, and the people are dressed this way, and it's like the temperature is like this. Being present with your experience, take a breath and sit down. Honor transition. So I learned to use thresholds as a transition. So I step outside, look at the sky. Oh yeah, that's pretty awesome. Letting myself be in rapport with beauty wherever I can find it, because that's one of the key practices. And then, because when you do that, so you're practicing like a non-threatening, super easy way to add good moments to your life. That's a full straight on mindful practice. You step outside, you look at the sky, you see a tree, you see whatever, you take a moment, you go, yeah, that's pretty awesome. And don't let your mind just run away with the next thing. You make yourself, remember I said on purpose, in the moment, and not just mentally. So that's it. On purpose, I'm going to sit there, look at how beautiful this is. It's in the moment. And I am judging it. Actually, it's beautiful, but it's not intellectual judgment. It's an experiential thing. That's a very simple, basic mindful practice that you can do.
That reminds me of that guy that like sits in his car before he goes in his house. He's like, before, takes a deep breath. It's like, all right, let's go. And then you go.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you sit in your car a second. I was driving. I'm getting ready to go into this madhouse party.
Yeah.
Take a breath. Get ready. Let's go. But first it's like,
just gather.
Let me just gather I call it gathering my bits. And I'll say, I need to gather my bits, because get real and the real question is, what's my experience now? I'm experiencing jazz. I'm excited. All right. Mm-hmm. I'm experiencing just naming those things is a very, very powerful advancement in people's skill level.
I like that. I'm going to try that. And so how do you also deal with, you said, our brain with what's going on with the noise? Do you believe in like social media purges, like just get away, like turn it away for what, like, get away from technology? Like, what are some techniques for that?
Well, the thing is, you have to be respectful, once again, of the impact. So it's like, doom scrolling, as they say. It's kind of like you have to realize, boom, 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 boom. It's like a slot machine. Boom, boom, It's like, and you can get wired up to that, and you're not really being present with anything except what you see on your phone. And you've seen pictures, videos of these guys like walking and falling into fountains and stuff. It's kind of like completely not present, completely in an intellectual experience of another world, instead of being present with where they are. Situational awareness, 0. And so you have to be aware that can happen, and which world is going to serve you better, right? It's kind of like, where are you going to actually connect with opportunity? And I mean to say, well, that's probably not the best example, because there are plenty of opportunities on the web. But it's more like, how do you make them real? Right. And you start with where you're at. So there's a time for that. So I'm going to devote my time to like being present digitally, and I'm going to engage, but then disengage, right? And be present with your actual real world. And you do that through like mindfulness meditation practice, or is being present with your actual experience of reality. And then let yourself take that in, because if you can't do that, your whole world is going to be on a phone. And that's not going to work for you in the long run.
I ain't gonna lie, like, I'm not the best at like meditation and sitting down mindfulness, but what I do love is a walk in nature, like looking
It
at
counts,
all.
man.
And
It totally
now that
counts.
you're saying that, it gives me credit. Like I like to just randomly walk, and my best thoughts come from when I'm walking, like
Absolutely.
just
Absolutely.
walking
And that's
outside.
so you want to lean into that. That's what I call in my work. I call that you're an ally, right? That's a legitimate natural ally for you. You lean into that because it helps you. Now, if you can just take this step further, it's kind of like you're walking, you have good ideas, I do too. But if you just work on breathing and feeling into your physical experience,
For the walk.
what's it feel like to just put your foot on the ground? Have you ever done any like martial arts training or anything like
No,
that?
but I
So,
did, but I
go
did
ahead.
do a thing. I did do a thing where this guy called PQ reps or something, whatever. But he was talking about like you focus on like the really, really minute sensations, like you just said, like
Yeah, yeah,
how
yeah.
your heel feels when you touch the ground, or how if you're
Yeah,
rubbing your fingers together, you like focus on the two fingers that are actually
yeah,
touching each other,
absolutely.
rather
Those
than
are
the
great.
whole hand. You're like really zeroing in on the friction of two fingers. So
Yeah,
I
that's a
might try
beautiful
that.
practice because what you're doing when you do that is you can't if you're really paying attention. Like I'll do this in my trainings as well. It's like, so can you feel the ridges of your finger, right? Can you feel the texture of the cloth, right? And you really, really get into it. You're not thinking about your problems. All that goes away. Instead, you're paying attention to your sensations. So use the same capability. Somebody walks in the room, they start napping. How's this feel to me? I want to back up. I want to yell. That's what it feels like. Now you have that as part of your formula, your responsiveness, rather than being in reaction. You're going, oh, this is the way it feels to me. And I can choose now to be different. And that's the magic. Then you have a choice. So, really, we're talking about giving you choices. And so, another way to phrase this kind of stuff is when you're working on being mindful with people, you're literally creating freedom for yourself. You're not being reactive to the first thing that you want to do. Instead, you're giving yourself the opportunity to choose from a menu of possibilities. And that is what freedom is the person who has the most free person in the room is the one who has the most choices. And if somebody is unable to make a choice because they're living on automatic all the time, you might legislate that they're free, but they are a prisoner of their own device.
Wow. Well, that was pretty dope. I can't really think of any question after that. That was that was really deep. So, but I'm gonna go to my part of my show, which I call shot for shot. So
Okay.
you get to ask me any random question. I get to ask you any random question. You will go first. I go first.
Hmm. Have you ever had a, well, let me ask you this. Let me see. What's the best experience you ever had on vacation?
Wow. Oh man. Dang, that's a good one. So, well, I'm gonna say, can I just tell you one of the most impactful trips I've ever had? I don't know about the best, like one of the most impactful trips I ever had in my entire life was studying abroad in China.
Oh man.
In 2006, I studied abroad. It was a totally spontaneous, random trip. I was going to the study abroad fair at JMU.
Mhm.
I went to the random table that said they're going to China. It said sign me up, and I went.
Oh,
I went for a summer, and for someone, there was 12 Asian Americans, 12 white students, and then me. And so, so I was, in a different world. I mean, it was
yeah,
very,
you
very,
were.
very remarkably different. But just the things I learned, seeing the world from a different lens, seeing
Yeah.
the world, seeing it. I think anyone, regardless, I've seen travel a lot, but I think a lot of people should travel to other places, get that fishbowl lens of America from the outside to see how the world looks at you from the outside.
Yeah.
It was just a great trip. So I would say that's probably one of the most impactful trips of my life.
Mm,
Food and just
nice.
being that was probably the farthest from home I ever been. All that. So
That's a long way.
yeah, that's a long way. So I can always, like, without a hesitation, can say what was the most impactful trip.
Hmm.
It was definitely going to China and studying abroad.
Cool. That's
So
great.
I'd always encourage everybody. So I see that you have a painting behind you,
Mhm.
in regards to waves and stuff. So what, when you are trying to be mindful, and I'm looking at your scenery and stuff, what is the ideal setting for you to practice your mindfulness? Like, do you have to have like the scene set, or now you gotten to a point where you could do it anywhere? Like, what's
I'm kind of that. I'm kind of like wherever I am, that's the place to be mindful. It's kind of like there's a rule in mindfulness. Is a rule. It's kind of like there's only one time to be mindful, and that's now. So there isn't a condition. There's scenarios that are more conducive, like, hey, put me in a beautiful landscape and,
Mm,
and have a little, string ensemble playing in the background with a beautiful mountain and all that. Yeah, okay, that's easy to be mindful, right? So I would say I don't work hard to create conditions. What I do is I notice when I'm get all sped up inside because I have a lot, to think about, and I, I'm always trying to figure stuff out, and I have to stop and go, let's just take a breath and be present while I'm drinking my little cup of coffee. I'm going to feel the weight of the coffee cup. I'm going to be present while I'm doing this and just being really slower, letting myself feel what it's like to actually move through space and be present with my thoughts and noticing this rev, go, oh man, I really want to figure this out. I'm really excited about it. And just noticing it instead of just being in it.
gotcha. So you're doing it anywhere, everywhere. All
Well,
right,
I try, but
I try.
I fail a lot. But it's like when the remembering is the practice.
Gotcha. I like that. I like that. Well, Mr. Hill, this has been a great episode. I'm really glad that we actually got this on the books. I know it's been a long time coming.
It has
I
been.
know it has been, pandemic, whatever, all this, but I'm really glad that we got together. So
Yeah,
now
me
this is the
too.
part. This is the part of the show called shout outs and plugs. So please, show love to anyone that you want to show love to, and then plugs anywhere where the listeners can connect with you, engage with you, things that you're working on, anything that you'd like to share with the listeners. So this is shout outs and plugs.
Shout outs. Okay, well, let's see. Um, I've been working on this, like I mentioned, this other podcast at the Institute for Organizational Mindfulness, which is kind of a real businessy thing, but I've been really involved with them lately. And I'd like to, give a shout out to those guys because what they're doing is so visionary. It's like they want to help businesses put mindfulness in practice in the way the business works. So when like the employees are treated mindfully and interviews are mindful and everything goes, the whole organization gets structured in a mindful way. That's like a radical new idea that is really starting to take off, and it's a big, big deal. And so I'm really happy to be involved with that. It's certainly blown my mind. Um,
And then plugs, ways that people can connect with you and things that you're trying to work on.
Well, languageofmindfulness.com is the main way to connect with me. My I'm on Twitter at Brett Hill, BRETT Hill, HILL, and I'm working on I have a Brett.w.hill on Instagram, and I actually have a TikTok thing I haven't done in a bit, but called Mindful Guy at Mindful Guy. So but if you want to actually like connect with me and like do a session, which I do for free for people to see if there's a good idea or a good fit, look me up on at languagemindfulness.com. There's a button there, and it's easy peasy just to go, hey, let's chat and see what can be helpful. And there's a ton of work to do, and it's like, particularly students, man, it's like it's got to be stressful as hell right now. So it's like I really have a special place in my heart for people that for the work you're doing and for the generational issues you guys are facing.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, definitely working with young people, college students, as I said, transitioning into, from college to the real world is quite a transition, right? So
It really is. And so
a
there's a
lot
lot of
going on.
like, who am I and what do I do here?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'd be really happy to, and I went through that same thing, man. And I'd be really happy to share my experiences with anyone who wants to talk about it.
Excellent. Well, all the resources will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for being a guest. Please follow up with Mr. Hill and all his uh, resources that he shared. Definitely I learned something. He doesn't know, but I was taking notes while he was writing every podcast for me is a learning experience, and that's what
Yeah,
this podcast is
absolutely.
about. So, Positive Filter listeners, this has been another great episode. If you like this episode, please share it with a family member or friend, as well as give a like or review on iTunes or Spotify. Those likes and reviews help elevate the podcast. You can also leave a voicemail for the podcast at 571 336 6560. That's 571 336 6560. Sharing positivity is a movement. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity a Movement. Thanks for listening.